Hi, I'm Linda Gale Walker. I'm the Executive Director of Innovation and Impact at Meteor Education, and I'm here with
Doreen Osumi, Superintendent for the Yuba City Unified School District.
Raj Baines, Principal of Terra Buena School for Yuba City Unified School District.
Tino Guzman, Secondary Coordinator for Yuba City Unified School District.
And I'm just so excited for y'all to be here today. And I luckily, I feel like we're kind of just having a meal because we're all friends, I feel like. I've been so impressed with Yuba City. And one of the things that has stood out to me through this entire process has been the importance of the alignment and how that has worked with leadership. So thank y'all. I know you're all busy and have lots of things to do. But one of the things I first want to ask is how really important has this leadership alignment been to the success of the rollout of this project we've done?
I think the important part of it is it's been a collaborative process with leadership from the district level to the site levels. And part of that, you get buy-in from your staff. And that kind of permeates the system, the organization. I think that's helped really kind of solidify the importance of working with Meteor and with creating new learning spaces for our kids.
And I think that's something that we see a lot. Not everywhere has that alignment. And I think that piece has been good. Y'all have been very much in communication. Have you seen the same type of thing?
I've seen the same thing in our schools. I definitely feel like the support from the district level and as Meteor as well has been a key point in this process. Just having you guys come out, support the teams, support leadership, so that we can then take that vision to our staff as well.
Well, I kind of want us to walk through a little bit, Doreen, because one of the things I think has been intriguing to me about the leadership process was, I'm going to start with the Reimagine Workshop where we all got together and started looking at the mission and vision to make those priority learning outcomes. What was that, being able to think about, what was that experience kind of like for you?
It just really brought us back to why are we here?
Okay.
What kind of environments do we want for our students? What kind of experiences do we want for our students? What is our end goal? Ultimately, when these kids leave our schools, what do we want for them to accomplish and achieve?
I agree. That was so intriguing to me when we had those conversations about what do students look like here, and then what is that going to look like when they go out into the workplace. I think that is a huge important piece. Then also as we've gone through this process, one of the things, and Doreen, I think you would completely agree, the success has been the support y'all. We come on site, we help do things, but you being aligned with that and feeling like we have such a transparent, open relationship, I think has been key. What is something that you've kind of had an aha from that process with working with putting the environments in?
I think the aha for me has just been, it really, we go back to our mission and vision, like our why are we here? What do we want? And if our mission for Yuba City Unified is to educate today's students to succeed in tomorrow's world, we start from the ground up. We build our classrooms to support that.
I think it's important also, in addition to that, is the relationships we build even with Meteor and with our district. It's easy to communicate with Meteor. They have a similar vision. They understand student environments, and that's really important when you're working with a company, that they all have a kind of a similar belief system and how to best serve kids.
I appreciate that because that's the way I felt too. And I know one of the trainings we kind of all did together was our safety from the inside out, and that leading through post-traumatic growth. And I loved listening. One of the things that just kept coming loud and clear when we did those activities and things was, it is important to think about not just the kids, but the teachers that we're going to go in there and how are we going to support? Because we'd all been kind of coming off the trauma of the pandemic, but also now we're putting in something that's really going to be a little bit of a, catalyst of things and make people uncomfortable. And you had such good thought process with that. What do you think skills were that you had to kind of hone to make this process and build up your teachers and putting these things in place to make this impact your instruction on your campus?
I think when we talk about trauma, one of the things I've learned is that everybody experiences trauma in their own way. The students experience the COVID in their own way, and it was a traumatic experience on so many levels because they were ripped from schools. Teachers experience it in different ways. Everybody on your campus has their own perception of what they went through, and it's like an accident. The driver sees one thing, the person in the back sees another thing, and I think just really trying to understand how everybody felt, and we're all coming back into these environments how did this experience shape us, and where are we going from here?
I think to add to that, the importance of that was it built trust with all of us. And so we had the whole leadership team, and there was vulnerability, and it really established like a network of relationships. So we would feel willing to work with each other, and even after the trauma, we're willing to like trust each other. So I thought that was really important.
And I think that's something, and Doreen, I feel like you have been so instrumental in setting that stage. Again, you know, you don't see that everywhere. So what was something that you feel like your campus leaders really rose to the challenge of with putting in these new systems?
Well, I think that from the starting, when we started with this whole project, was when we brought them together. I was curious to see if we were all on the same page. Would they all agree on the priority learning outcomes, and that they were able to have conversations. They could debate. They could be able to have those honest conversations. So I think the one thing is that I'm proud of the administrators that I get to work with, because they truly believe in what they're doing. They believe in student achievement and making sure that the students' and family needs are being met. And so they are very honest and very frank with me, and they will take a project, take an initiative, take what's being asked of them, and they go full in. If they don't agree, they will let me know what they're thinking. But I think the process has allowed me to see that they are on the same page. They're willing to work collaboratively together with their staff, and that I can count on them to make this happen. It's not, I mean, again, everyone is at their own place in terms of where they are in their learning and how they return from the pandemic. And I think that they know their teachers better than anyone in terms of how hard to push and how to navigate the concerns that might come up, how to reinforce what's going on in those classrooms, and advocate, because there are times where things aren't working out and that something needs to be adjusted, and the principals will reach out, the teachers will reach out, and so they are their staff's advocate as well.
And I feel that was culture, that culture of trust.
And one thing that, just to piggyback off of what Doreen is saying, I think it also helped us see that there's more similarities among us than there are differences.
I noticed that as well. And I noticed agreed, not everybody was here at the same time. I mean, some people have been here a long time in Yuba City, some are, newer. But what I noticed about that process is that level of that culture of trust, and we're kind of aligned on our same vision. And I think if we hadn't had that, it would be real easy to kind of fall out of line when things start getting tough. And that's the piece too. I don't guess I ever speak to you. I was thinking about this the other day, that you don't say, I'm going to ask my principals, or I'm going to talk to my cabinet, or I'm going to do this or that. And that to me is not something I see everywhere. So that is a special thing a little bit about here. One of the other pieces with talking about this really alignment piece and the leadership, how have you funneled that message down to your staff? Because, you've kind of gone through the reimagine process. You talk to Meteor a lot, and this is going to be what we're going to do. But the crucial piece is teachers are stressed. And let's be honest, that is not something that's easily remedied. How did you bring that message of, even though this is stressful, it's going to be at the end of the day better for kids, down to your staff? And
I think with my staff in particular, this was just a time for us to rebuild. We kind of we had to reimagine what we've been doing for so long, and we can't just come back and ignore everything we've been through. We just had to, it was the perfect time to have that conversation of, why are we here? What do we want to accomplish? As a staff, at my site in particular, we spent the time to realign our mission and vision, which also aligns with our priority outcomes. So it really just, times changed, but what do we need to do? What is our end goal? And it helped us see that our end goals are still the same. We just have to adjust how we are going to get there.
I think working at the district office, not specifically at a site, it's pretty awesome. So I get to work with the site leadership, and I get to work with the teachers. And so coming back from pandemic, from the trauma that she mentioned, there's definitely a trepidation about trying something new. There's always a trepidation about change in education. But when you're kind of revamping the whole system, literally from the ground up in the classrooms, there is a fear.
Yes.
And so I think as leaders, this district's been pretty effective at kind of assuaging that fear. I've been showing the teachers like the why behind what we're doing. Like this is student centric. It's all about self-engagement, student engagement, and it's about providing kids student agency. And if we can do that and everyone's kind of on the same page, it's best for our district and it's best for the community, for our kids who leave it.
Well, and I think you have got a unique position because you are at the secondary level and helping because you've got multiple high schools. And I think, you're TK8. So we kind of have the gamut between both of y'all. And I think what you've done a good job, it seems like, is you providing support to those leaders. And it's all aligned with what the vision has been. And then I see from you two working with it, that camaraderie you have together, even with elementary and high school. I think Reimagine Workshop for me was like, it's really cool to see a TK person talk with a high school person, and these are still the same guidelines. They just developmentally may look different. So that to me is really very, very important. And how has this experience been different? Doreen and I were talking earlier about, we are seasoned Doreens. We're not going to say old. We're seasoned, and one of the things is you put in lots of pilots. You put in lots of things to try to change instruction. How has this process been different than something else you might have done? And all of y'all can kind of speak to that.
I think we really, with my staff in particular, I feel like there's just a level of trust going through this process because we're talking about our whys and what we want for students. And it really, instead of like, as Tino mentioned, when there's change, there's a lot of trepidation. We took the time to just sit down and talk about what do we want for our students. And, with just reimagining our classrooms, reimagining what we're doing, I think that having those conversations, we brought down a lot of walls and it opened them up to be a little bit more vulnerable about what they wanted classrooms to look like.
I think in my position, I'm newer in the district, and so I was able to work with Meteor in a previous district to look at re-outfitting our classrooms for kids were more engaged and had more voice. What I like what we're doing in our district is it's everybody.
Yeah.
It's equity minded. And so every kid has opportunity and teacher to have a new environment. And I think that's pretty special because I think we're doing the right thing for the kids.
Exactly.
So it makes me pretty excited to be part of this venture.
And that is we had that conversation just the other day and during the equity piece, we talk about that and we look at that. And when you think about equity environments and what that does to a kid's mental health, there really is starting to be research on that, around that. And that's something y'all are ahead of the curve on. You don't have brand new buildings. You've made do with what you facilities you've had, but these spaces have been able to really be impactful even in, like I said, it's somebody's like, well, they're just still buildings. Yes, but it's about y'all really kept it about the instruction and the impact of how these environments can be a tool. So one other thing I kind of had thought about too that we visited about earlier was kind of how have you grown as a leader? Because I do think that's what else I have seen is the language and the I was thinking about this when we very first met, Doreen. The conversations we had, because we kind of knew what you wanted to do, but that talking about that environment piece as a tool was a different type of conversation. So how have you grown kind of as a leader? Even with you, has that changed did that change your perspective all of what you thought about facilities?
Well, I think for me, the change has really been about me being able to step back and be able to trust the people who are in our classrooms and our leaders, and know that we all share the same common vision for our students. We're not, we may disagree about things, but in the end, we're all here trying to do the best thing for our students. And so I think that was, for me, empowering to see this and to know that we're all on the same page. I do acknowledge that this is a difficult process at times in terms of timing. It's not always perfect and change is hard. But I think that in the end, our teachers understand the why and what we're trying to accomplish. And again, we've done a ton of programs. We've spent a lot of money on things that have come and gone. I think the district, the community understand this is a long-term investment. It's not just right now because the money's here. This is about, if we expect our students to go out and be productive citizens, then we've got to provide an environment in which they're going to be able to learn and be able to work in collaborative groups, to be able to make choices. The old traditional, you go back, those classrooms looked like that when we were in school.
That's exactly
And
right.
it's and again, it was fine for the times, but we're asking our teachers to help our students learn how to work in groups, how to have conversations together. And so you can't do that if you're in a row. So that's just some of the things that I think are have been happening. But for me, it was really being able to trust the people who are doing the magic in the classrooms.
And to me, I'm a big, I love talking about leadership, climate culture. I think one of the best quotes I heard was that climate is what's said in a staff meeting, culture is what's said in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I think you've done is by allowing these teachers these voice, and we've already had this conversation, all of us as leaders can be a little bit controlling, just saying. And so being able to relinquish some of that control, I know, Doreen, you've done that to your campus leaders. Have y'all had to do that in your role, relinquish a little control and then provide support? Is that happened to you through this
Absolutely.
process?
I think you have to trust. I mean, you have to relinquish that control and just step back and let them play with things and try things out. And then, they'll come back to you and say, well, this didn't really work, or can we change this? You need them to go through that process. And I think that trust is a big piece. You have to step back and allow them to make some mistakes or figure out this isn't quite working. I need to adjust this and have those conversations. So I do feel like the trust has grown from that.
And it's really hard when you look at that. We talk about that, y'all have seen ad nauseum books on building trust and all those things. But what I think has been my aha from this project, working with you as leaders, is you had a baseline for that, but it's grown. I've just seen so much, like even the intersection between each other. We were just talking about that earlier. I've got this, even if you're not the same grade levels, how do you feel like that this equity piece, going back to that, and putting in, I know secondary is fixing to start putting their spaces in. How do you kind of help teachers see the importance of, for example, utilizing this furniture to ensuring all kids have an equitable learning experience?
I would say it goes back to this idea of opportunity for kids. Like kids in all of our classrooms, whether they're at the TK or the middle school or the high school levels, they should all have the same opportunity to experience learning in all the same classrooms. So in a high school level, for example, if you're in a science classroom, you should get a similar experience, different type of instruction. Every personality is different in the classroom, but you should have a similar experience with the setup, the layout, the environment of the classroom. I think every kid deserves that opportunity, because it's the right thing to do.
And at the elementary level, TK to 8, what happens is if you've been teaching for 20 years, you just accumulate things. And if you're a brand new teacher, you just get the leftovers.
Yes.
So it really, going back to that equity piece, whether you're a new teacher or you're a seasoned teacher, providing kids all the same opportunities.
That's a great point. I hadn't really thought about that, but that is something that really impacts that. Going back to kind of the piece of this, we got the, environments, and we had the model classrooms, and we did that feedback loop. And I think that feedback loop, and we also looked at our pro-social trend report where we went through the campuses to see what was the impact in the classrooms. We did notice a lot of students who they were set up in more collaborative groups as opposed to rows. We saw more teacher proximity. We saw more student conversation. Are you still seeing that impact as we go along through campuses?
Absolutely, definitely. I think the environments are set up and conducive to that. So when you go into these new environments, I absolutely see a lot more collaboration, kids working together, kids taking charge of their learning. It's definitely visible.
I was able to be a principal for a couple of days at elementary school.
Oh,
And that was fun. I had a kid in my office. I was like, "Whoa, how you doing, buddy?" But I was able to go through the first grade classrooms. This was at Lincoln Elementary, and it was awesome to see kids in collaborative groups. And these were first graders.
Yeah.
And they were talking. Their student voice. You could hear like the hum of learning in the classroom,
Love
and you
that.
knew they were
Yeah.
engaged.
Yeah.
And for me, it always goes back to engagement. How do you know kids are engaged? And I think the furniture's not the answer, but it's like, how do you use it
Yes.
to facilitate that in your classroom, which I thought was really fun to watch with the first graders. I almost wanted to go back and be like, I should be a first grade teacher.
Exactly.
But how cool is that going to be to look and watch those first graders that are having that ability to do that by the time they're in seniors in high school? I mean, that is where I think this is, like you talk about, impact of lasting change. I know that's been your vision, Doreen, all along, and is to see that big impact. And I think think about that. I mean, I don't know how y'all were, but we sat in rows and did spelling tests, and we didn't really talk. And if it wasn't about the content. It wasn't that this is going to be a game changer for some of these kids. How are your parents reacting? How are the parents reacting?
They love it. They really do. And they walk in the rooms. It's the environment just looks completely different than those traditional in-rows classrooms. And one of the things, I had a conversation with one parent, we were talking about the furniture, and they said, this is great. And the thing we were talking about was just like the curriculum is a tool, the furniture you have in your room is a tool to accomplish goals. So, and she said, you see it.
Yeah, the parents are supportive. I agree. They're very supportive of it. I mean, it's very different than what everybody is used to, even when we were in school. It's transforming really the classroom environment and how kids learn. It's putting kids in the center of learning in the classrooms, which I think is very supportive by our parents.
Right, and that's great. I mean, that's great to hear, and that makes it a little bit easier. When we start talking about the training that we kind of brought with the pilot classrooms, and I know that's something that you've seen, but if you have that training piece, how imperative do you think that's been to the big rollout? And I know we had the the pilot classrooms, and we did some training with them, but now we're looking at, especially with you, a 3-5 to rollout. Has the training helped support the implementation of the environment as a tool?
It has definitely helped. Just like we spent time as leaders talking about priority outcomes, I think that same thing happens with teachers, because they understand the vision. Why are we doing this? And how are we going to use these tools that are in our classroom? So I think, the feedback has been very positive.
Are you seeing them start to make that? Because we just talked about that. There was a little bit of an aha. We feel like the first one is really about how do you actually utilize the furniture. But now the next step is kind of the bridge between how does that impact what I'm teaching and the task alignment and all those things. And how do I do teaming? How do I make collaborative groups work? I think that is so key, and it moves a little bit. It's different when you have a pilot. We're talking about that. When you're a pilot, you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. It's going to be great. And then you roll it out to everybody, and there's lots of levels of hesitation.
Yes.
So do you feel like that's helped?
I think it's definitely helped. And I think this having teachers who have piloted it and share their experiences, then there's a less hesitation with the other teachers, because they're like, oh, I didn't think of that. And so it just opens their eyes to what's possible.
That's awesome. I want to have a question for you too with the secondary coming on. And one of the things I heard you talking about earlier was you're looking at curriculum to think about how you're going to build these next pilot classrooms. Talk to me a little bit about why you think that's so important.
Well, it's important because, just like in high school, at the content areas, they have different focuses. So like with, if you're doing CTE or science, there's a lot of project-based assignments, a lot of project-based labs in the learning environments. So you really want to talk with your teachers and those departments and decide how is this furniture going to best, amplify this space for my kids. And so I think it's really important that you have that alignment with your curricular vision in your departments and in your system, with how the furniture is set up in your classroom and how you do the PD, for example, with your kids.
And that PD part is intriguing to me, because even the work we've all done together through leadership, one of the things that I think has happened every time is making that connection to trauma, to SEL. I mean, if you look at the research, we're just getting kids with trauma. More than half your class is going to have some level of ACEs, and we're aware of it, I think, as teachers. But it's been really intriguing to see why, when we talk to the leaders about why you don't necessarily want a kid with lots of trauma with their back to the wall, I could even see the light bulbs for leaders. Have you been able to take some of that information and infuse that back into the people you work with?
I think so, definitely. I mean, I think that, as you said, we have so many students in our classroom now that have those ACEs, and you have to sit there and think about, well, what kind of environment do I want for these kids so that I'm not further contributing to
Traumatizing, yeah.
traumatizing them. So what kinds of things, do I need to do? And I think that, having even spaces for kids to go and take a break, that has definitely also helped. So we take that information, and I think that it just, how do we make this work for students who don't necessarily come to school prepared to learn because they're missing some social emotional piece that we need to also help bridge.
I think in addition to that, coming off of COVID, I think I can almost universally speak in the United States that kids were kind of out of control. And so there were a wide range of behaviors manifested in K to 12 classrooms because kids were kind of isolated behind their screens, looking up at the fan on Zoom. And I think rolling into furniture layout and working with Meteor, it gives us an opportunity to not only talk about instruction, but like you said, talking about environment. How can we use that environment to actually create a more positive culture in the classroom and to reduce behavior? There's a lot of things you can do with this furniture where you can actually have spaces for kids in the classroom where it can actually de-escalate kids before behavior even gets amplified.
Yes.
I think that's a whole different component in addition to the instructional piece, which I think we haven't even tapped quite into yet, which is awesome.
I completely agree with that because I do think helping kids learn to self-regulate is going to be the key to that. And that goes back to something we talked about earlier about wellness centers and the impact of that. Do y'all have a wellness center yet, or is it
we
coming?
are getting it.
Okay. So when you had this conversation with the first round of wellness centers, how did you talk to the second group fixing to get their wellness centers about what that's going to look like?
Well, and part of it was the identification of the spaces is kind of how, first phase, second phase. I think that everyone understood the rationale behind the need for wellness centers on their campuses. They saw the first group roll out, and I think then it was a no-brainer. Everyone realized what was coming and what was needed and found optimal spaces to make it happen. So I think they were thoughtful in the process of identifying the spaces and reached out if they couldn't identify a space. But I think that we took our time to do this the right way. And our counseling team has been, and our social workers and school psychologists have been instrumental in helping design the rooms. But it has been conversation, and it's been, the counselors actually have had their meetings in the wellness centers that have been in place so that the other counselors can see them, and there's been conversation. So I think all of that has been helpful, and I don't know that there's anyone who's resistant to the thought of it or aren't looking forward to the implementation coming forward.
I think it's intriguing when you think about, I was talking about this earlier, that having that dedicated space, I think gives a vibe to the whole campus that's going to be important. And I think as a leader, yes, we're always concerned with students first, but you also have to be concerned with teachers. And I think, being able to provide the support y'all provided through this has been important, and also providing those spaces. It has just shown a dedication to that, and that's impressive. And again, sometimes when you're in the midst of it, you're just going next to next to next, and you don't think, okay, here I am. But when like I said, I can sit here and look and see just from the very first time we met at that very first Reimagine workshop where people came in and said, okay, where's the catalog? I'm like, well, we're not getting catalogs today. They're like, well, hold on. This was a furniture meeting to now we're,
I remember that.
We're now our educational solutions. They're like, really? You're going to talk to me about furniture for 3 hours? I'm like, oh no, hold on. So I think it's so intriguing because one of the ahas for me with this group was, we all can repeat the mission and vision statement. I think every district can do that. It's plastered on the wall. But the ability that y'all did just such a wonderful job of really breaking down what each of those things mean and coming up with those priority learning outcomes, that to me is going to drive what you talked about with student engagement. So, one of the things that I have just really been impressed with part of this project, Doreen, is the way that you rolled out your pilots. We met with the leadership. We decided to do pilot teachers. Talk to me about why you decided to do a pilot and not, with grade bands. So we did TKK 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and then the content areas. Why did you decide to do it that way as opposed to saying I'm going to do your school and then another school, this or that?
Well, we knew that we needed to get the teachers involved in the decision making regarding what was going to be in their classrooms. And so we needed them to participate by grade bands. The decision to roll out by grade bands versus by school, we knew this was probably going to be a 3-year project at minimum, based upon how the funding was rolling in. And my question to everyone was, how are we going to pick? How do you decide? You'd hear, if I picked this school, it would be, well, she always picks that school. Or if we picked Raj's school, well, Raj's school always gets what, And so it is actually, the unfortunate thing. And so I didn't want any student to not have an opportunity. So when we discussed this, it was not going to be which school was going to be last. There is going to be grade levels they're rolling out, but it really was across the district. Every school, every campus, every grade level. So every first grader is going to get the furniture at the same time. Every third grader, and so we really thought through this. And again, I just didn't want to have to be able to, look Raj in the eye and say, well, you're going to be year 3 and have to wait. So there are grade levels that we'll be rating, and we're rolling those out. But it was really about throughout the district and ensuring there was equity, and that it wasn't the haves and the have-nots.
And I like how you did the intentionality of choosing how to roll it out based on the data.
Right.
Like you didn't just say, okay, I think we'll start here at kinder. You looked at who had the best feedback of the environments, it was kind of already at that process. Did that help a little when you started talking to your leadership about what you were going to do?
It did, because Meteor came in and shared the data, and they were part of the decision making and the understanding of what direction and which grade levels were going in the order they were going. And it was about the data. So there were there's some challenges that we're still trying to navigate through certain grade levels, and so they were part of the decision making, because they were going to have to go back and explain to their teachers the why we decided on which grade level. So it was important. And again, for me, it's about equity throughout the district and be able to make sure that every child's going to have that opportunity.
So one of the things with you, I'd kind of like to see your input is TK8's a big campus. You've got lots of kids. How did you have some pilot classrooms at your campus?
I did. We had 5 pilot classrooms.
Okay. So were any of them 3 through 5th grade?
One of them was.
Okay. So how did the rollout, how have you seen, I know the pilot teachers, I hate to say that, but sometimes they're so excited and it's like, we may not love this, but we're going to get in there and try it. But when you do a mass rollout with a grade level, you are going to have different levels of readiness. How did you feel like that went based on, are you glad you did it that way instead of saying, I have TK to 8 with all new environments?
No, I think I like the grade bands. I feel like it's a slower process as a site leader, because you're going to wait, the 3 years.
Okay, now I got it. Now I like it, and I want to go on.
Yes, but it also builds that excitement, because the teachers get to walk in and see, oh, how does this look? Oh, you get to teach that way because you have this in your classroom. How can I recreate this with the old furniture? But it really, truly, I feel like there's more excitement. There's a little bit more buy-in as well, because we have some kindergarten classrooms that have it. We have some middle school classrooms. We have a 3rd grade class. It's just, I feel like there's more excitement with it. And people are like, when is our turn? When do we get it? So it's
that's always a good thing. So are you seeing the same thing when you visit campuses? Because it can be a challenge. I know for you, logistically, it's got to be a little, because you've got this going on at multiple campuses as opposed to one thing complete. Have you seen the same thing as you walk campuses, the excitement, or is it there's some apprehension? Or
I think there's more excitement. I think there's always going to be a little of apprehension. But I also like the idea that they get to see other teachers use those classrooms. And so we all know that, PD is really effective when teachers have buy-in and where there's trust with the teachers, between the teachers. So when they, like, for example, at Yuba City High School, they have a special education classroom with Meteor furniture in it. And so those teachers can see it actually in action. And so it really helps collectively get more buy-in, I think, with the teaching staff when they can actually see it happen, like on ground, and they actually see like the immediate application in the classroom. So a lot of the times we get PD where it's kind of like esoteric in a way.
Yes.
With this, it's like, this is how you organize in the Socratic seminar, and this is how fast you can go back into rows or go back into collaborative groups.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the application of it for the teachers, whether it's TK, whether it's middle school, whether it's high school, I think that's really important that we still see that.
So it's funny, I got into professional development because I hated it as a leader. Like I was always, and a teacher too, I was always like, half this doesn't apply to me, and then it's half of it's boring. And one of the things I think that we've kind of turned a little bit our professional development, it's on its head, is we don't necessarily start with tons of theory. What we've learned is letting teachers utilize this space and own this space. Then we can start moving instructional practice by talking about systems and structures, and that automatically leads to that conversation. And to me, that's just been so much more valuable than, hey, here's this program, you're going to use it, and this is how you're going to teach it. Because it's just it's not authentic. So I do you feel like that you're seeing some instructional shifts? I know you haven't had it. You've got some models, and you've seen some of the models around. Do you feel like that those people that started earlier, are you hopeful to see that instructional shift you want to see?
I see it in our classrooms. I definitely, some of the middle school classrooms, collaboration is a key standard now with our students. And I see a lot more collaboration in classes. And like I said, when you see it in some of these classes, they're able to do it. You see other teachers go, oh, I can see those kids now doing that in your classroom. How do I then make this work in mine? And, I've had teachers say, I'm going to take the kids into the library for this project because they want the bigger space. They want the bigger table. So I've seen it definitely kind of go through our campus. They've been excited.
I think at the high school level, it'll continue as we pilot more classrooms this summer. I think we'll see next year in the upcoming 3 years, a lot more just variety of learning in the classroom based on how she was talking, like more grouping. And it's easier to group the kids in the classrooms. You don't have to move. I mean, they move right into groups. It's like you push them in. They're in the groups. You have whiteboards you can write on, and it really invites student ownership of their learning versus kind of like the passive like retention of it. They're like owning what they're doing, which is pretty cool to watch.
Oh yes, no, I completely agree. Well, my last thing to y'all is if you were talking, because there's lots of new leaders out here, and this sounds overwhelming. I'll be honest. I know even when we first started having this conversation about this rollout, and y'all, I think the forethought of your district was a huge piece. You didn't kind of just say, okay, we got to do this and we've got to spend this money and we're going to do it right now. I was like, okay, we've got till 3 years. This is what our process is going to be. And now it's going to go quicker. I mean, let's just be honest. It's going to go much quicker. What advice would you give to a new leader about ways to make something like this successful with their staff and with their students?
I think the process that we went through was really valuable. Really taking time to identify what are our priorities? What do we want to accomplish? It's like you said, we started out with, where's the catalog? What are we getting? But that's not the end goal here. It's not just to put something shiny, brand new in the classroom. It's the end goal is what is the outcome we want for our students. So taking time to prioritize that, I think that's going to be key. Okay.
I think in addition to that, when you have your vision laid out of what you want to do with these 3 years, with your vision for student learning, that in all the decision making, you don't steer from that. Like this is your north. And as hard as it gets, you stay true to that vision. And the decisions are based on that, which I think we've done here in our district, which is pretty awesome to see.
I agree. And this kind of goes to my last question for you. It's difficult as a superintendent. You have so many things pulling on you all the time. Like I always love visiting with, because I'm like, I love that you get real worldering all the time. That's a good thing. But how are you, I talk lots of times about with leaders about you can be 3 types of leaders. You can be a life preserver leader, you're just throwing things, or you can be a lifeboat leader and you're pulling people in, or you can be a lighthouse that's steady. Even when it's foggy and the weather's bad, you're still a beacon of hope. How have you been able to kind of keep that true north with all the other responsibilities that you have? I
think that you have to prioritize, and you have to determine for yourself as a superintendent what is really going to make an impact on the teaching and learning in your classrooms and in your district. And so you have to stand strong with that conviction. The other things, there will always be something, and you have to learn how to balance that and determine what's really the priority and what can fall off the plate. I think the other thing is you do have to surround yourself with talented administrators who share the same vision and are determined to help make my vision, make the board's vision come alive, because they do see that it's what's going to make a difference for our community and our students. So those are the key things. But you do have to, turn your ears off. Don't read social media. That's what I say. Don't read social media.
That's probably
Don't
the
read
biggest
social
key.
media.
Yes.
But just and stay true to what you think is important, and that will again, there'll be critics and there'll be naysayers, but in the end, you gather your agreeers and you keep moving forward.
Well, thank y'all so much. I mean, I have to tell you, I was telling Doreen earlier, this has just been a phenomenal program for me to be involved with and see the journey that you've gone on and get to be really not just like I feel like we're all friends. I was like, yeah, we're gonna go because you do have this experience, and I think that comes with the transparency, the authenticity that you've shown, and you've been brave. We hear lots about brave leadership, but you've been brave, and that's been the key to success. And so keep doing what you're doing. I cannot wait to continue this journey with you. So, and if you would like to learn any more about this process and these great leaders, I mean, I wanted to say again to you, Doreen has had us come in several times and not just work with the teachers, we work with the leaders. And that has been such a blessing to me, but also I think it's kept us moving in that true north direction. So if you'd like more information on that, please contact us, www.meteoreducation.com.